If you have kids or you're planning on having kids, what books should you read them to make sure they have a solid foundation in English? This is something as a new father that I'm thinking about a lot these days and doing a lot of research about as well. And I'd like to share a bit about my experience, the books that I'm buying to make sure that my son grows up being a good English speaker as well. So if you enjoy the video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe. And now let's get into it. You may or may not know that recently my son Pi was born. And so when your kids are born, you got to figure out what to teach them, right? How they should learn stuff and what they should learn. So I thought about my own childhood, which I think was pretty good. I think I had a pretty good childhood. I got a lot of individualized learning. I got to explore and be curious. It was great. And when I was thinking about it, one of the things that popped up on the question of what I read early on was Dr. Seuss. Now, why Dr. Seuss? What stuck out to me about that? For me, it was the patterns that Dr. Seuss books bring up and the rhythms, the tempo that you get when you read Dr. Seuss books. If you don't know what I mean, I'm talking about books like Hop on Pop. And I'm sorry it's a little keyed out here because it's green. Or the classic, perhaps one of the best books of all time, Green Eggs and Ham, a classic. And another really good one, Fox in Socks, a classic. And I bought these to read to my son. He's too young to really process it, obviously. He's a tiny baby. But I wanted to find something that would, in addition to the high contrast baby books that I'm showing to him so that he can start to develop his object recognition skills, I wanted to give him something that would give him at least some exposure to not the meaning of the English language, but the feeling of it and how it can be playful and flow and rhyme. And how when we speak, the voice goes, and there's a lot of flexibility when you speak, I suppose, any language, but I'm speaking specifically of English. And I think it's a good choice for teaching kids or giving them exposure to that side of the language. Because when we think of language, we often think of words and what they mean. And here's the word that you need to know. And here's how it fits together in grammar, or in a story, this is the message of the story. Or, these are the characters and this is a description of a tree or whatever. No, this is more about the playful side of the language, which I think is very important to build up someone's ability to have that feel for the language. I think I was very strongly impacted by Dr. Seuss books, and I'll read you a little bit in a moment. But it then got me thinking about, okay, well, is this just, my opinion? Or are there other people out there who have the same opinion? Are there any studies, right? Do people actually look into this stuff and try to see, which books help kids more or less, right? And what I found was actually very interesting. There haven't been any sort of serious in-depth studies specifically on Dr. Seuss that I could find, but a lot of people, reputable people who are thinking about this in early childhood development said a lot of the things, or at least from what I saw, said a lot of the things that I tend to feel and agree with naturally about when it comes to Dr. Seuss. The rhyme and the rhythm, getting a sense for the inflection, the basic structure of the language, the grammatical structure, because a lot of the words in these books are silly, meaningless. A zug is not a real word, but if you say a zug under the rug, then you're learning zug under the rug. That is a grammatical construction using prepositions to place one thing under another thing, right? So that's also very important for getting a feel for the grammar. The elasticity or flexibility of the vocabulary itself. We make up words all the time. Shakespeare made up a bunch of words and phrases that we use today. Language is very flexible and plastic, and it's a good way to realize that, hey, maybe I just make up a word. Sometimes you want to express yourself and you can't find the right word, so just figure out something. And I think it's a great way to build a model in your head of language being this flexible thing that you use to communicate what you feel and what you think and what you want to say, rather than I receive language and I use it according to the rules, right? I don't do that. When I'm trying to express something, I'm trying to find the best way to say what I want to say, rather than I'm trying to say everything according to the rules. I happen to follow the rules most of the time, but when I need to break the rules, I know how and when to do that. I think the other part of that is just creativity. I think especially I want my son to have a sense for not just, Tom and Mary went to the store and bought some bananas, but some stuff that's completely out there. Concepts like green eggs and ham have stuck with me to this day. I read Green Eggs and Ham as a kid, and the stuff is still in my head. And when I read it to my son, I hadn't read it in, I don't know how many years, 100 years, however many years it's been. It was fresh. It's been there the whole time. So, and I feel like there's been an influence of that on my ability to be creative and be imaginative. The idea of having green eggs and ham and the tension in the green eggs and ham. I'll read a little bit of that again in a second. And also, it's very funny. So I think also, my opinion here, humor is a very big part of life. I think so. And introducing humor, I think it's important to read serious books. I read my son these contrast books, and it's really like, hello, Mr. Turtle. Nice shell. I like your flippers. Hello, Mr. Zebra. Very simple stuff, which is good. You need that grounding in reality. But I think also introducing the funny side of life and humor and some darkness and that developing that sense, I think, is very important. And that's one thing that I really like about Dr. Seuss. The zug under the rug, I remember very clearly from my childhood. This is kind of funny, but also a little bit scary. There's this thing under a rug, and it's just a shape. And that kind of scared me as a kid, but also it activated my imagination. And it's kind of funny that there's this weird thing under these kids' rug. It's a bizarre type of humor that Dr. Seuss had. So let me grab Green Eggs and Ham, and I'm just going to read a very short excerpt of it. Green Eggs and Ham, a classic. These are green eggs. These are invisible eggs and ham, right? But okay, so I'll just read a section of this. Would you eat? Oh, let me move them let me go a little later. So this guy Sam, he's a psycho. He is obsessed with getting this other guy to try green eggs and ham. I mean, he's extending it. I apologize for the green screen, but he's extending it on this ridiculous arm on a plate, trying to get him to eat it, and he just doesn't want to eat it. And his approach, which is a hilarious approach, is rather than saying, okay, so you don't want to try green eggs and ham. First of all, why is he obsessed with this? Which is funny by itself. It's funny. he then thinks it's a good idea to, maybe he'll want to try it in a bunch of different settings. Okay, you don't want it, but would you eat it with a mouse? Would you eat it in a house? That's funny, I think. And he keeps pushing this until he finally just gives up. It says, all right, fine. You know what? If you leave me alone, I'll eat it. I'll try it. Okay? Just leave me alone. And he tries it, and guess what? He loves it. Spoiler alert. So I'll just read a little excerpt here of this. Very short excerpt of this because it's funny. Say, in the dark? Here in the dark? Would you? Could you? In the dark? Then the response is, I would not, could not, in the dark. Would you? Could you? In the rain? They come out of the cave into the rain, so they're on a train. They were in the dark, and now they're outside in the rain. I would not, could not, in the rain, not in the dark, not on a train, not in a car, not in a tree. I do not like them, Sam, you see. Not in a house, not in a box. Not with a mouse, not with a fox. I do not eat them here or there. I'm sorry. I will not eat them here or there. I do not like them anywhere. You do not like green eggs and ham? I do not like them, Sam I am. That's his name, Sam I am. And then his next question is, rather than, okay, you've said many times you don't like them, all right, fair enough, I'll leave you alone. No. His next, after that, after all of that, I would not eat them, I would not eat them in a box, not with a mouse, not with a fox. And then he says, you do not like green eggs and ham? Very clearly, he says, I do not like them, Sam I am. Without skipping a beat, Sam I am then says, could you, would you, with a goat? Then suddenly there's a goat in the car. And now he has to deal with this. I would not, could not, with a goat. Would you, could you, on a boat? And now they're falling off of this train onto a boat in the water. The goat is falling. The fox is falling. It's just chaos. Anyway, and finally, he's so defeated. He just gives up, And there's a perfect balance there between playful language and I really enjoy reading them. Let's see. There is another one that I wanted to share, kind of the creepy side, because there's a slightly creepy side to it as well. The creepy side, I'm just looking back and forth here because I've got, I got several books in a case. The slightly creepy side is also interesting. How do you introduce the darkness of life to your kids? Because that's part of life. You don't want to scare them, obviously, but it is there. So how do you do that? And I think it's a good way to do that too, rather than letting them play violent video games. Introduce things like this. Now, again, if there's a green screen effect here, but look at that thing. It's just terrifying. Look at his face. It's so scary. He's got weird tusks, weird flippers, and these kids are carrying it into the house. And they say, look what we found in the park, in the dark. We will take him home. We will call him Clark. He will live at our house. He will grow and grow. Will our mother like this? We don't know. So these kids have gone rogue, and they found this bizarre creature with tusks and they've called him Clark, and now they're taking him home, and they don't know what their mom will think. I'm sorry, that's very funny. So anyway, if you've got kids, or you will, or you want to just get a feeling for what a lot of kids in America are or used to be, maybe are, I guess it's still popular, get exposed to linguistically, Dr. Seuss is a very good choice. That's my personal recommendation. I think it's funny. I think it's great for kids' imagination. I think it's great for getting the sense of the rhythm and the timing of language. So let me know, if you do, how it goes. If you read them to your kids, it's also going to push you to learn that rhyme scheme and learn that flexibility of pronunciation. So it might help you practice your speaking skills as well. If you haven't already done so, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. And also get a free course, Natural English Conversations, in the links in the description.